There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, everybody, for letting me know. It helps if I have the right source put in. So let me know how that sounds if you can hear me. But I think you can. So what I was saying was, so apologize for being late. Um, I got caught up doing something, and then I realized that I don't have the files. Um, Sounds good. Awesome. 5 out of 5. Sweet. I realized I don't have the file, one of the files that for the episode I was planning on working on, so I had to figure something else out. Um, so now I'm going to be working on a client episode of mine, Your Killer Life, which is a show about breast cancer and breast cancer survivors and like advocacy and kind of it's a really cool show. I love working on it. Um, it's an interview show, so there's going to be the host and the guest. Unfortunately, it's Zoom audio, so I'm just going to have to deal with it. I did my pre kind of RX processing. When it comes to Zoom, as I don't go too in depth. But yeah, so I'm going to bring it into Reaper and kind of do my leveling and all of that. Going to be showing the new loudness tools that we got in Reaper that I've been using a lot. Love them so much. Um, and I plan on doing an update video for 6.30. I've recorded it twice so far, and both times the video, like the recording, is just garbage. And I think I got it worked out. So the first one I was completely out of focus, and the other one, like my coloring was way off, and I could not fix it. Um, I think this is looking better. I'm trying. I've watched so many videos on lighting, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I mess it up. But I think it's okay now. I don't know if I have a LUT on my face. I might have. Anyway, I think it looks okay. Hey, Paroma. I hope I said that right. Thank you so much. I'm glad you can make it. I know you were worried about that, and it's like, what, like super late there? Looks great. Awesome. Thank you. So maybe tomorrow I'll actually record that update video and get that done. But so let's get to it. Lighting looks good. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad. Because it's been really frustrating because like I got a new camera and I didn't mention this in yet in my videos, but my last video my face looked really weird and I didn't care for it. But I got a new camera because I wanted to like improve the quality, um, and then like I just couldn't get it to look right. So it's just really kind of frustrating and kind of discouraging. But now I think I got it. Fingers crossed. I actually have some new lighting coming in, so hopefully that'll help even more. Um, and then I might be doing something with the background and kind of getting away from the gold glitter, but I don't know. I'm not super worried about that. Looking good, thank you, and welcome in everybody. Mark's here, Kareem, Paroma, 30 days of podcast. Thanks to you, everybody, for coming in and hanging out. Um, yeah, so let me go ahead and just kind of hop over to Reaper. I'm watching at 144p, so my 4K camera probably doesn't translate well. Um, what? One second. Uh, Weird. So like I was saying, this is a show on breast cancer. The My client is a breast cancer survivor, so she interviews other survivors, and they talk about advocacy, um, and all kinds of things. It's called Your Killer Life. So it's going to bring up the template for this show, and I did some pre-processing in RX, so I won't be going through that this time. Just got a bigger monitor last month, so the 4K translates really well to my screen. Nice. Yeah, because like as you can see, like I bring down my camera, like I wanted to have like a camera that's further away and have more background, so I could kind of like manipulate it some. Uh, I think I understood what you said. Um, and so by shooting in 4K, I can like do more without distorting the quality. Not that I actually am uploading 4K videos, because I'm still rocking a 1080p monitor. I'm thinking about getting the 1444, kind of going a little bit more, but one of those things that's not a huge priority for me. I like the pink color for the track since it deals with breast cancer. Oh, I didn't even put two and two together. I just have it set up to like every new track is colored because I like the way it looks and keeps things separate. And I didn't put two and two together. That ended up being a pink track. All right, so I'm going to play a little bit, and you guys let me know if you can hear it.
Do you know all of your construction options? All of your reconstruction. Do you know all
And
of your
how?
construction
Okay,
options?
so I think I need to come
All
up.
of your reconstruction options. I've talked
I just
about
want to make
in
sure
my
that the
implant
volume of
reconstruction, and I've had a guest on.
the the show matches the volume come from Reaper matches my volume, so that way you don't have to adjust yours. Like I said, I did most of my pre-processing. I do quite a bit in RX, and I'm doing a little bit more in Reaper. Um, Sounds good. Awesome. So the one thing is I do plosives in Reaper using the RX plugin because I found that I do it in RX and I do all my EQing there, and then I still need to like there'd be a couple places where I need to add plosives, and the RX uses like the lower frequencies, and by that time I'd already done a high pass, so it's not as effective. So I do um, like my high pass and low pass in RX, so that way I can still add a deplosive if needed and still be effective. Sounds good. Sounds good. They match. Awesome. So I don't know if you guys know about Nova. So TDR Nova is free, but the GE version is really cool. It has the smart ops, so you can actually. I haven't used it, but you can if you have like two recording from the same person and you need to match like the EQ, so they sound similar. So it sounds like it's one recording. You can actually like bring in a reference and it'll work to match it, or you can do like some de-resonance and some cool things. So I'm still playing around with that, but it's looking pretty cool. And it's only like $60, I think. And it has
We build an
a
intentional
visualizer,
killer
so you can
life.
actually see what you're doing. So I do a high pass of 60, low pass of 16. And I did some EQing in RX, so I probably won't be doing much here. And then bring up one of my favorite plugins, the Vocal Writer. And find a loud point. Well, actually, I had an idea. Instead of doing that, normalizing the loudness, running my truncating silence. So I have a custom action that it does auto trim split and then it truncate like it brings everything together. And auto trim split, I run that through effects. So the more effects I have on, the slower it is. So I'm actually going to do this pre-effects, normalize it so that way it's loud enough so that's effective. But this way, because like putting all my plugins in just slows the process down quite a bit, and we'll just be sitting here staring at each other for the next 20 minutes if I do that. Um, and nobody wants that. So I'm going to normalize here to get it loud enough, run that, and then I'm going to balance the audio. Let's see if that works out better.
And she told me about it. So DEEP stands for deep inferior epigastric perforation.
Much, much faster. I wonder, actually, before I jump like boost it so much, create a clipping. Awesome. All right, so now I'm going to do my leveling. So that was much quicker than normal.
Ow.
So let's try to find a loud spot. This ought to work. So what I do is I highlight a section, turn on repeat. I'm actually going to mute this so I don't have to listen to the same bit over and over again. So I put it on repeat, and then I can adjust my slider here. Okay. Then I'm going to bring up compressor. And while I still have like the loudest points, that's where I'm going to set my first compressor threshold. Because I don't want to do more than like 3 to 5 dB reduction. So I just want to kind of compress it to that point, and then I'll kind of analyze it over a longer period. So it looks pretty good. So this is probably going to be my best bet. So what I'm going to do... Oh, let me also add my normalizer. Or limiter. So I'm going to run a loudness analyzer, or using the new loudness tools. So I'm going to select the time selection. So it's going to analyze this bit right here. And the loudness range is looking good to me, so I don't really need to adjust that. I just need to boost the gain a little bit in order to get it up to my target. Yeah, and it automatically detects that it's mono, so I'm aiming for about minus 19. It's a little bit louder than that, which is perfect. All right, so we kind of do the same thing. And since this is Zoom, obviously it's going to be super compressed already. So this is a much, much simpler process. The loudness analyzer is native to Reaper. It is now. So up until this point, if you had SWS, you have this loudness analyzer, which you can select an item, analyze it, and it'll do all that for you. But this is all pre-effects. With the latest update, with the 6.30, there's a number of new actions. So if you do a search for loudness, if you can spell it properly, you have these 5 tools, like new actions right here. So you can do the entire master mix via dry run render, master mix within the time selection, which is what we just did, loudness of selected items. So if you just want to do these items, it'll give you the loudness information for those 3. You can do the entire track. So if you just select a track, you can run, it'll analyze that track, and then select the tracks within a time selection. So let's say you have this selection, but you only want to analyze this track, you can run that. So this is now all native to Reaper. So you don't have to spend money on WLM or install third-party plugin, which is so cool. I've been using this so much. And there's actually a little bit more I'm going to show you here in a second. So let me...
So that was, chemotherapy was very tough for me. Now,
this does need a little bit of de-reverb. So I'm actually going to take that back into RX and we'll do it there. Those new options look so useful, very cool. Yeah, this is excellent. Yeah, it's so cool. Because so what I would do before, and if you saw, one second.
Enough, Tammy, I just spoke to a woman today.
Also, completely unrelated, but you have this output reverb only. If you do like audio dramas, this could work. Like just doing this and outputting that would be like such a cool feature for like a horror podcast. Sounds so creepy. Now I don't even know if you can hear it.
Frustrating to her because I'm bringing this up for a reason. She went.
So back to the loudness. One thing, the way I used to do it was I would um like just kind of
We
press
discussed that
play, let it run, and just kind of watch the loudness and kind of see what it did over a small period. But you can only do that in real time. Or, you know, if you wanted to speed it up, that kind of affects loudness in ways I didn't like it. Um, but now you can run it as fast as your render, so you can do, depending on your plugins, multiple times real time, so you can analyze a lot of this much quicker and much easier. And so all of that was done via dry run render, and what that means, it's not actually creating an output file. It's going through the whole process, but you're not left with an audio file that you need to worry about. Um, so I had the exact same thought while using RX Reverb or D Reverb. I just play it for fun sometimes. Yeah, I only recently started doing that, and it's so creepy. I love it. Um, so yeah, now you don't have to like deal with having an audio file, mess around with that. It's all built in, much quicker. So you have those options. Time selection, the entire master mix, select a track, select the items, and then like select a track or time selection of a track. And then on your render menu, you now have this dry run option, which is the same thing as uh, the master track via dry run. Goes through the same thing with these options. So if you do something in here, it'll take that into effect. And you also have this normalize option. So on render, it'll normalize to a certain loudness. I haven't played a whole lot with this. I'm not super thrilled with the result I've gotten. I seem to play around with it a little bit more, but that could be something that's pretty cool. So now that's done. Take that back into RX. Okay. I don't think it's open somewhere else. And the file's offline in Reaper. Weird. But oh well. Alrighty. So now
The axilla, it goes up
a
in.
little bit better, but again, it's Zoom, so can't really do a whole lot with that. Go ahead and do my high pass, low pass.
The axilla, it goes up into your, where the lymph nodes are, feeling your neck area, and of course the breast tissue too. So it's very important to do that. So, found out I had left breast cancer. At the time, I was being treated at a world-renowned facility in Houston, Texas, called MD Anderson Cancer Center. It's a very fine center in Houston. And the course of action in 2002 for me was to begin with a lumpectomy. Now, I did my second diagnosis.
Try to find that sweet spot where the loudest point it hits 0. Oh, too far. Probably right about here. There we go. I think on this one I'm going to use Sheps because I think I might need to add a little more de-essing. Though I did get a plugin from Waves called Sibilance that does a really good job with de-essing essentially. Throw on my limiter. And then take a big section and analyze the loudness. Excuse me. So pretty close there. Might reduce the do a little less compression. And just give it a couple notches of boost. Sorry, I might add detail. Oh, no worries. Yeah, this will be available on the replay, so you can always watch the rest of it and catch whatever you miss if you wanted to. All right, so now, why do you use Sheps rather than RX for de-essing? So I'll do an initial de-ess in RX, and then if I find I need to do more, then rather than taking it back into RX or adding another plugin into my chain, I can just bring on Sheps and just add it to this chain. There's no like, it's not that I get better results. It's just kind of more of convenience, I guess. So now kind of everything's lined up. So what we can do is run the master mix and get a feel for the loudness of what we're looking at. So looking a little quiet on that. So what I'm going to do, so I still use WLM because I don't like the new native FX for loudness, but I'll use it so y'all can see it. So what I'll do now is throw this onto it. And we can see exactly which track is contributing to the loudness being too low. And another plugin that I've been playing around with, because Waves had that summer deal, so I got a creative package which has like the NS1, noise reduction, WLM, which I already had, playlist writer and geocentric voice or something like that. But I've been playing, so that got me 2 free plugins. I got Sibilance and Max Volume, and I've been using Max Volume on interviews. I'm not going to do it today because I'm still kind of messing around with it. But I've been doing it to kind of balance the between speakers. See, that's weird. It's almost like it's detecting that it's stereo. Interesting. So that could be an issue. Because it should auto detect mono versus stereo when it comes to loss in the native Reaper. But it seems like it misread this track. Because it showed minus 19, which I would assume would be mono, but it's actually minus 19 stereo. So that's interesting. So I'll just go ahead and give that a couple notches up. Uh-oh. Yeah, let me know if it's choppy for everybody. So I'm not showing any drop frames. Let me check my YouTube quality. It's showing good health. So hopefully, maybe you just need to refresh. Or maybe I need to adjust my settings. I can hear him clearly. Okay. Yeah, so Mark, maybe try refreshing and see if that helps. So I'm trying to figure it out. Because the guest sounds fine. It's the host. I think the levels are off a bit, so I'm going to... Okay, so now it's reading it as mono, minus 19, because it's matching what the stereo would be. So, I don't know. They might need to tweak. Maybe they didn't, because now the latest version is 6.32, and I haven't updated that yet, so maybe they fixed it. I don't know. But now we're looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and start editing.
As we talk about trauma, loss. Hello and welcome. Hello, and welcome to Your Killer Life, a podcast where we talk about the really real realities of a killer diagnosis like breast cancer, with a focus on health, hope, and happiness as we build an intentionalities of a killer diagnosis like breast cancer, with a focus on health, of a killer diagnosis like breast cancer, with a focus on health, hope, and happiness as we build an intentional killer life. I'm your host, Tammy Grable-Woodford, and thank you so much for listening in. Do you know all of your construction options? All of your reconstruction options. I've talked about my implant reconstruction, and I've had a guest on, Kim Bowles, and in episode 14, we discussed the aesthetic flat closure. My guest today, we are going to be talking about tissue reconstruction. That's not all we're going to talk about, but we're going to start there. Terry Coutee is a long time. I'm going to start that over. My brain. Okay, here we go. Hello, and welcome to Your Killer Life. A podcast where we talk about the real. Hello, and welcome to Your Killer Life, a podcast where we talk about the really real realities of a killer diagnosis like breast cancer, with a focus on health, hope, and happiness as we build our intentional killer lives. I'm your host, Tammy Grable-Woodford, and thank you so much for listening in or watching. Do you know? Thank you so much for listening in or watching. Do you know all of your reconstruction options? I've talked about my own reconstruction, which was implant. I've talked about my own your reconstruction options. I've talked about my own reconstruction, which was implant reconstruction, and I had a guest on for episode 14, Kim Bowles, and we discussed aesthetic flat closure and what that is. Today, my guest and I are going to be talking about tissue reconstruction. Terry Coutee is a 2-time breast cancer survivor and the founder of the Deep Sea Foundation. I'm so excited to have you on today, Terry, as we talk about your story, the foundation, and all of the amazing advocacy work that you do. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Your Killer Life podcast.
Tammy, thanks for having me. Tammy, thanks for having me and waving across the way up here in beautiful sunny Seattle. Beautiful sunny Seattle today.
It is downright warm for us. It is downright warm for us.
Yeah, it is. We talked about that before we started recording.
Exactly.
We're kind of warm weather wimps now, aren't we?
I won't speak for anyone else, but I know. I won't speak for anyone else, but I know that I am.
How do you pitch the idea of doing a live edit on their pod to a client? I've been thinking of doing one on Audacity for ages, but can't figure out how to phrase a request. So with this particular client, she's also my business coach, and like she's super supportive of like anything we do. And she's just like really open and sharing. So she's just like, hey, any of my stuff, use it for whatever you want to. So she's just really open about it. I have another client that does a weight loss program. I think in my last live edit, that's the show that I worked on. I was just kind of like, hey, I'm doing these like informative like tutorials, like how to, just kind of ask like, hey, do you mind if I use your audio for it? And it's kind of explained what it is, and she wanted to know like where I'll be doing it, and I told her like, hey, it's gonna be like on my YouTube channel, blah blah blah. And she was really cool. The only restriction is sometimes she has her past clients, so people that she's worked with, and those I don't edit because anything that's mentioned on there she doesn't want to get public, but most of her shows are just solo. And so there's never anything that she says that doesn't need to be out there. So I don't know if that helps. But it's just kind of just being honest, being like, hey, here's what I'm using it for. Here's why. And just kind of like making sure that it's not affecting them at all. And depending on the client, so if it's like a hobbyist podcaster, then like just kind of pitch the idea that like, hey, this is exposure. I know exposure dollars don't pay the bills. But you know, if you have a good relationship with your clients, then they might be more inclined to kind of help you out and be more willing to do it. I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense too.
I won't speak for anyone else, but I know that I am. Well, yes. I am so excited to have you on the show. So talk to us a little bit about you. Let's talk about Terry. So talk to us about the first time you were diagnosed, what your diagnosis was. You're a 2-time survivor. I think that's really important. And I think that understanding sort of the roots and where you come from. And I think that understanding
that was definitely helpful. I'll see if asking about a solo episode would be okay, and can send them a link to a webinar I did with my own audio. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that way they know what to expect. And like, it doesn't hurt to ask because there's really no downside for them. Um, so I mean, it doesn't hurt to just like throw it out there.
I think that understanding sort of the roots and where you come from is really going to help us understand the amazing work and why you're so passionate about the work you do at the Deep Sea Foundation.
Well, again, Tammy, thanks for having me on today and allowing me to share this important information, not only about my story, but I've realized over time that my story evolved into global stories of survivor, evolved into global stories, global stories. Global stories of survivorship in breast cancer and planning breast reconstruction if women have lost their breast, if women have lost their breast to mastectomy, which is what I did my second diagnosis. So my first diagnosis was in 2002, and I was young. I was 47 years old, and it was in my left. If 47 years old, and 47 years old. It was in my left breast. I found it myself through a self breast exam. I highly recommend that women who are still having their monthly periods to do their self breast exam shortly after they have completed their cycle. That's how I found my first breast cancer, and it was very small. It was.
Another update with loudness with the latest update of Reaper is down here. You can actually set this so it gives you a readout of the lux level, so you can choose how you want, like what you want displayed, and like if you want it on top or not. But so if you watch down here, it'll give you. So I'm doing the short current, and so you can see what the short-term lux level is on the master track. If you look right down here,
Small. It was in my left breast and kind of in my armpit or armpit or axilla area, and kind of in my armpit or axilla. And kind of in my armpit or axilla, area. And so very kind of, and so very kind, very area, very kind of hard area, very kind of hard to even palpate myself. I remember when I went to my breast surgeon for my workup and just finding out if I even had breast. I went to my breast surgeon for my workup and just for my workup and just finding out if I my workup and just finding out if I even had breast cancer. They said, how, did you find this yourself? And I said, yeah. They said, how, did you find this yourself? And I said, yes, I did. And they said, well, good job. So, I just remind women that doing a self breast exam is not just about feeling your breast. It goes way beyond that. It goes into the axilla. It goes up into your, where the lymph nodes are, feeling your neck area, and of course the breast tissue too. So it's very important to do that. So important to do that. So found out I had left breast cancer. At the time, I was being treated at a world-renowned facility in Houston, Texas, called MD Anderson Cancer Center. It's a very fine center in very fine center in Houston. Very fine center in Houston, and very fine center in Houston, and very fine center in very fine center in Houston, very fine center in very fine center in very fine center in very fine center in Houston. And the course of action in 2002 for me was to begin with a lumpectomy. Now, when I say begin with a lumpectomy, often women have to go back, and men also have to go back for a re-excision to get something called clear margins, which is what happened to me. And so I had my initial, lumpectomy in January of 2000. In January of 2002. And because I didn't get clear margins, I went back in February and had a second lumpectomy. And it's real interesting, Tammy, because at the time I had quite a bit of tissue taken out. It wasn't visible if I was standing in the mirror looking at myself, but if I lifted my arm up, there was a definite gap. 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 There was a definite the arm up. There was a definite gap. There was a definite the tissue is gone look. And in 2002, breast reconstruction was a conversation that was brushed over and that was brushed over very lightly. I heard it at the time, but I think because I had a lumpectomy, I didn't really absorb it. And I really do believe that my breast surgeon, had.
What action are you using to remove audio? So I've got a couple. The main one where you highlight, hit a key, and delete.
Had oncoplastic
Is a custom action. So this one I picked up from Riley. If you do a Google search for like Reaper podcast editing guide or something like that, he's the one that pops up. But he kind of walks through this one. But it's select all items in current time selection, remove contents of time selection, and then it does need SWS. Because if you see this crossfade, so that way any artifacts can get faded out. That's what that does. And then unselect all items, so that way deselect and you don't have to worry about it messing anything up. And then just make sure to consolidate undo points, so it's 1 undo instead of 4. And that's what I do for that. I also have what I call my Adobe style edits, to where like right here, it will delete everything from my cursor back to the previous edit point.
Lightly. But I think because...
Or from here to the other side.
I heard it.
Those are a little more complicated. So pause it, move the edit cursor to play cursor. So this way you can do it while the playback is happening. So you don't have to pause it if you don't want to. Splits the item, needs SWS to select previous item. So this is to edit left, go back. Move cursor to left of edge item. Then it removes that item. So it makes a split, creates a new item. You remove that. And then it jumps back 1 second. And then it brings back the play cursor. And then clears all peak indicators. Because I can't remember which action here it was, but it caused my audio to peak. It wasn't actually peaking, but it caused the meter to go red. So I just clear all peak indicators and then play. So that way you just hit this button, one button.
And that was very lightly.
And it keeps going.
And that was brushed over. And that was
and you can do it while playback is happening if you wanted to. And then to do the Adobe style right, so that's from your cursor forward in the audio. It's a little bit simpler. So you pause it, move the cursor, split it, remove that item, because whenever you make a split, it automatically selects the item in front. And then removes that item, jumps back a second, brings back the cursor, and then clear, and then play again. And those are the main ones I use. I also have a delete button that... So a normal delete with ripple editing brings up, shores everything up. But I have one that doesn't do that. So that way, let's say like here, I wanted to remove these. I can do it without it messing with the other tracks. So if I just straight up delete it, it deletes deletes everything because of ripple editing. This way it doesn't. And that one, is it turns ripple editing off. It removes whatever you clicked on, turns ripple editing back on, and then resumes playing. So that way, as you're
to be able to connect in
going,
that way and have that information. So, and you're right, it does when you're
you
looking
don't
at
have to stop in order to actually run the action. I like that clear peak indicator addition to the action. Nice. Yeah, I actually set it to my. I always struggle. So this one, so backslash right below the backspace key, so that way, at any time,
you know, had oncoplastic.
I can just hit a key and it clears everything. Because I found that to be pretty useful,
And
especially
in
when you're trying to get your levels right. Because when you first start out, you could do compression. You're probably gonna have some peaking. It's just an easy way. Hit that one button, clears your peak indicators.
And in 2002, breast reconstruction was a conversation that was brushed. Breast surgeon, you know, had oncoplastic skills even in 2002 because the breast, because the.
So with this, I can either highlight and delete it with my ripple edit button. Um, but let's say I wanted to leave this space. I want that little gap there. So I can either like highlight it and try to get as close as I can, or I can just set my cursor here, hit my Adobe style left, and it'll delete it right to that point.
Two, because the breast really looked nice, like I said.
It's an easy way to get like exact edits also without having to try to like highlight it to that exact point.
Said standing in the mirror, you know, facing myself forward on, you know, facing myself in the mirror, facing myself forward on, but there was a lot of tissue gone. So that's kind of a tissue gone. So that's kind of a little tissue gone. So that's kind of a little. So that's kind of a so that's kind of a so that's kind of a little background about my lumpectomy. And because of the type of breast cancer it was, I was ERPR positive. The standard of care at the time was to have 18 weeks of FAC chemo, which is fluorouracil, adriamycin, sometimes people call it the red devil, and Cytoxan. By my second chemo, my body started the factory started wearing out, as they used to say at MD Anderson. My platelets went down, my white cells, my my platelets, my platelets, my platelets, my platelets, my plate, my platelets went down, my white cells, my red cells. I ended up in hospital with a neutropenic fever by my third chemo, and it was rough. The color of my skin was my.
Also, Charles, let me know if that was clear, if that's what you were talking about.
And it was rough. The color of my skin was the same color as the gray walls in the hospital. Mouth sores, lost all my hair, lost weight. It was tough. And I had 3 weeks in between each of those chemo treatments to.
So that's another one. Um, if you want to remove audio, but you don't want to lose that space, because I sometimes, you want that little gap for, dramatic effect for that emotion. Um, so I do have a key that will delete everything that's highlighted with without turning ripple editing off. Yes, thanks. Okay, cool. So this one, and I think this also came from Riley's Podigy guide. But set ripple editing off, cut the items within time selection. Then set ripple editing back on, go to play cursor, and then unselect items. And now I'm noticing I need to add another thing to this. Because I wanted to remove, so right now it leaves the time selection. I want to remove that, which is remove time selection. Okay. So this one works really well. So if you're gonna use it to like take out a chunk of audio, you have to set up your mouse modifier. So mine's set up to right click, um, so that it also selects the track. And then when I hit that, it's only within the selection on the tracks that I highlighted. And that's pretty easy to do if you go into your preferences, mouse modifiers. Um, so range view, right drag, default action, marquee select items, set time selection. So that way, so normally whenever you highlight, it just creates this time selection. Now when I right click, you see that extra box, and that will also select the track, the actual, well, it'll select the items that I'm highlighting over. Hopefully that's clear, because I don't think I explained that very well.
Tough. And I had 3 weeks in between each of those chemo treatments to rebound. And I did, but then I got slammed again on the third week. So chemotherapy was very tough for me. Now, that was 2002. Protocols have changed. Methodology changed. Methodology has changed. Methodology has changed. There is immunotherapy now. That's a whole nother topic. But that was my diagnosis in 2002. I got about a month break, and then I went into daily radiation therapy over my. Then I went into daily and got about a month break. Then I went into daily. Got about a month break. Then I went into daily
Awesome.
radiation therapy over my left breast. After that, I finished 5 years of tamoxifen. But that radiation on my left side, even going back to the gym and stretching every day, left me with a great deal of scar tissue, because radiation has dilatory effects many times to the tissue and surrounding parts of the breast and surrounding parts and surrounding and surrounding and surrounding parts of the breast that were radiated. So I had a lot of tethering and a lot of tightness, tethering and a lot of tightness, tethering and a lot of tightness, tethering and a lot of tightness on my left side. Fast forward to 2002. I had gone back to school to get my master's in teacher leadership. My background it's in education. I was humming my background it's in my background it's in education. 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 I was humming along in life. My husband was overseas at the time working on a proposal. Both of our boys were grown, and we're like, oh, we're riding the wave. Terry's back at school. Hubs is over working on a proposal. This is all grand. And I had, this is all grand. This is all grand. And this is all grand. And I had my yearly mammogram in April of 2014, and the rug got pulled out from under me again. This time there was a recurrence in my left breast and a new primary in my right breast. Again, I had ER-PR positive breast cancer in both breast, and with both surgeries, both in 2002 and when I had my double mastectomy in 2014, I had no lymph node involvement. That was the good news. So no radiation the second time. I was very, very fortunate. I had a breast surgeon who was well connected. She knew about all options for breast reconstruction. She also engaged me in a shared decision-making conversation. We can touch on that a little bit as we move forward with the as we move forward with the interview here. And she sent me home with brochures about implant reconstruction. But I have to tell you honestly, Tammy, when I sat a little bit as we move forward with the interview here. And she sent me home with brochures about implant reconstruction. But I have to tell you honestly, Tammy, when I sat in her office,
I realized my mic was muted.
touch on that a little bit in as we move as we move forward with the interview here. And she said, as we move forward with the on that a little bit as we move forward with the interview here. And we move forward with the interview here.
Okay, how's this?
Touch on that a little bit in
All right. So one more time. Yeah. Okay. My audio is working. So that Adobe style edit that I was talking about is really useful when you know you need to make an edit, but you don't know where it ends. So I know right here
as we
that's going to need to be cut. So I make a split there, so I know exactly what point the edit's going to be made.
As we move forward with the
find
as we move forward with
the end point, then I can hit that key.
on that a little bit as we move forward.
And the edit's exactly where I want it. Now it's working. Yeah. I muted my mic in order to take a drink of water, and then I forgot to unmute it. And then I went to mute it, and so when I hit the space key, since I didn't click over or put the focus back on Reaper, it just remuted it.
As we move forward with the interview here. And
Pro Streamer right here.
And she sent me home with brochures about implant reconstruction, but I have to tell you
I did add something to the stream. So I think a lot of people in here are already in the Facebook group, but any lurkers, if you're not in the Facebook group, is this going to work? No, it's not. Okay, no, it did. Okay, cool. You can click on that link and it'll take you to the Facebook group.
Honestly, Tammy, when I sat in her office, I had absolutely zero thoughts that she was even going to talk about reconstruction to me that day. I thought I was going in there to find out, am I going to lose my breast or not? And I was pretty certain I was, since it was a second diagnosis and in both breast. But what I was so fortunate is that she knew about deep flap, using your own tissue, and she told me about it. So DEEP stands for deep inferior epigastric perforators. So think of epigastric perforators. Epigastric perforators. So think of the word. Told me about it. So DEEP stands for deep inferior epigastric perforators. So think of the word deep. It's within. Inferior means that it's in the tummy area, the under the epidural or the skin. And epigastric perforators refer to the blood vessels in your tummy area. They cut an elliptical shape in the tummy area. They disconnect that. They actually disconnect it. So it's like a tissue transplant. Disconnect that. They actually disconnect that. They actually disconnect it. Disconnect that. They actually disconnect it. So it's like a tissue transplant. Using the blood vessels and transplant it to the main mammary artery in the breast area where the tissue was taken out from the mastectomy. And they reconnect those blood vessels. So what you end up with is soft, warm tissue. The reason DEEP flap is called the gold standard is because it very much mimics the tummy tissue, the DEEP does. There are other autologous tissue flaps that we can talk about in a minute. So my double mastectomy was in April. And one of the things that I think is important to talk about here is access.
Sorry, 1 second.
Disconnect that. They actually disconnect it. So it's like a tissue transplant. Using the blood vessels and transplant it to the main mammary artery in the breast area where the tissue was breast area where the tissue where the tissue was taken out from the mastectomy. And they reconnect those blood vessels. So what you end up with is soft, warm tissue. The reason DEEP flap is called the gold standard is because it very much mimics the tummy tissue, the DEEP does. There are other autologous tissue flaps that we can talk about in a minute. So my double mastectomy was in April. And one of the things that I think is important to talk about here is access for women and men, but also knowing all your options. So again, I was very fortunate that my breast surgeon told. I was very fortunate that my very fortunate that my breast surgeon told me about my reconstructive options. At the beginning, I was set on having DEEP only because I wanted to use my own tissue. That doesn't mean that decision is right for everyone. And even having reconstruction doesn't mean that's the right decision for everyone. So I began doing my research to find my just right plastic surgeon. That person didn't happen to be in Tucson. I looked all over the country, and there are some amazing surgeons across the United States and in the world. So in the world. So in my research, all roads led to San Antonio for me. And I went to a group called PRMA in San Antonio and found my reconstructive surgeon there. Some of it for me, the primary choice was the criterion that I had for a reconstructive surgeon. I looked at their curriculum vitae. I wanted to know they were board certified. I wanted to know how many flap surgeries they had done, not just how many, but how successful they were. And successful flap surgery actually means how many flap failures have they had, because it happens. It happens, listeners. And if any plastic surgeon tells you they haven't had a flap failure, you need to walk out the door. 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 It happens in the best of hands for a number of reasons. Some of them are out of the control of the plastic surgeon. It's anatomical. But that being said, they had an extremely high success rate. I also wanted to know that there were going to be 2 microsurgeons in the room during the surgery, because it minimizes the time, under anesthetic for the patient, but also minimizes the time for the surgeon. So that's kind of a win-win situation for both. When I found my surgeon, all the criterion was met for me. And so I decided that's where I would seek my reconstruction. I had my double mastectomy in April, and through several road bumps, hiccups during that year in 2014, I finally was able to schedule my surgery December 1st, 2014. So I was without my breast for 7 months. I was one of those people who didn't do well living flat. Other women do. I fully respect that. But it didn't work for me. And I was extremely happy to wake up with breast on December 1st after an 8 or 9 hour surgery. And so that's my treatment. That's my diagnosis. That's my surgical choice. So then I get back from San Antonio. We travel back to Tucson, and I traveled for my surgery. I was on target to finish. I was surgery. I was on target for my surgery. I was on target to finish my master's degree, and I had taken a little break, during my surgery, and I started researching about how many women and men did not have or were not given all their options for reconstruction, and I was astounded, and I felt disappointed for them almost. So I began thinking to myself, perhaps I should write a blog about my experience. And Tammy, honestly, it started out as a cathartic experience. I knew nothing about blogging. I knew nothing about social media. But in the beginning of 2015, I started self-teaching myself all of that. And by the summer of all of that. And by the summer of 2015, my blog picked up speed. I was beginning to get requests to do guest blogging. I started getting followers on social media, and I'm like, what is going on? And I realized then, that's when I realized my story wasn't just my story. It was a global story. So I opened a private Facebook page in 2015 called Deep Sea Journey, Breast Reconstruction After Mastectomy. That has since grown to over 7,300 It's grown to over 73,000, 73,000. I'm sorry, 7,300. Sorry, 7,000, grown to over 7,300. Grown to over 7,300. Grown to over 7,300. Correction, 7,300 global members. Over 7,300. Correction, 7,300. Over 7,300. Over 73,000. I'm sorry, 7,300. Correction, 7,300 global members. Over 73. Grown to over 7,300. Grown to over 7,300 global members. Just 300 global members. Just by word of mouth and just because of the need for education. A year after I opened my blog, I got a phone call from my plastic surgeon. And he said, Terry, I have a question for you. You started getting a little notoriety through your blog and your advocacy work. Why aren't you opening a foundation? I took a deep breath and I said, what the heck are you talking about? So I gave it some thought. He has since become a mentor to me in many ways. And in the summer of 2016, I moved forward with the wonderful help of a friend who had been on nonprofit foundations. And she pulled up her sleeve and said, bring me coffee, I'll help you. And I got designation for my 501c3 status for deep sea, my 501c3 designation for my 501c3 status for deepseafoundation.org in the summer of 2016. So that's been the focus and mission of my work really since then. And what we do at the foundation is educate, support, and provide resources for all options of breast reconstruction after mastectomy for men and women, just to, give them the sense of empowerment, give them the ability to go into their consult and have a very informed decision with their reconstruction. So that's the Reader's Digest condensed version.
I love it. And wow.
Instruction. So that's the Reader's Digest condensed version.
I love it. And wow. So one of the questions I had as you were talking, you were ERPR positive, but what was your breast cancer type?
I had a merry mix-up. It's not a merry mix-up. The thing about it, Tammy, there is no one type of breast cancer. Patients really need to know what their diagnosis is and try to understand it the best they can. I know it's a monumental task, but I had my first diagnosis. Invasive breast cancer, and I had both invasive and in situ. So invasive means that it came out of the original, cell that started and it broke out into the breast tissue, but cell that started and it broke out, cell that started and it broke. Cell that started and it broke out into the breast tissue, but I also had in situ, which means it was encapsulated. So, or not encapsulated, it was enclosed, so to speak. So I had lobular cancer. So I had lobular cancer, breast cancer, and same thing in 2014. But then ductal got thrown into the mix. So and that was in my right. So and that was in into the mix, and that was in my right breast. Into the mix, and that was in my right breast. There was invasive and ductal components, pretty early grade or pretty early stage, grade 1 and grade 2 for both of them. And like I said, I had no lymph node involvement. So that's a mouthful to answer your question, but but I think my sage advice is to find out what type of breast cancer you have and what the treatment options are, because those will also vary. And you have decisions about those treatment options.
Yes. I always ask the type of cancer because it's interesting. You called it the lob mob, and it's interesting. You called it the lob mob. It's interesting. You called it the lob mob, and it's interesting. You called it the lob mob, and it's interesting. You called it the lob mob. It's interesting. You called it the lob mob, and it's interesting. You called it the lob mob in the green room. And I love that,
Yes.
Being lobular, as you know, they don't call it a rare cancer, but it's around 10, 12, 15% of breast cancer, depending on which number you're looking at from which year it was reported.
Exactly.
So, and a majority of breast cancers are ductal, but there are more beyond ductal and lobular. And so understanding your diagnosis. And I think And so understanding your diagnosis. And I think for listeners, it's important to be able to connect in that way and have that information. So, and you're right, it does. When you're looking at your own treatment path, there are many things to consider. And it all does start with doing, at least in my opinion, for me anyway, understanding my diagnosis to the best of my ability and all of the intricacies around it. Because prior to being diagnosed with breast cancer was breast cancer. Once you're diagnosed with breast cancer, it's a whole new world.
Yes. I always say you become the unintended educated breast cancer patient. Breast cancer patient.
Absolutely.
Or at least try to.
Exactly.
Overwhelming.
It is. And still learning. And of course, lobular, you were diagnosed originally in 2002. I was diagnosed in 2015. The first lobular, you were diagnosed originally in 20. Lobular, you were diagnosed originally in 20. You were diagnosed originally in 20. You were diagnosed originally in 20. You were diagnosed originally in 2002. I was diagnosed in 2015. The first international symposium on lobular was October of 2016. And so they're still figuring us out.
Yes. Yes. You know, I think, Tammy, because we have made amazing strides, because we have made amazing strides in breast cancer, but we don't have a cure yet. And until we do, you know, I think, Tammy, because we have made amazing strides in breast cancer, but we don't have a cure yet. And until we do, this cycle of new treatments, finding out more about it, digging deeper to understand it is ongoing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that in many ways is why you find so many women who have gone through this experience, who have become an advocate, in men and women, quite frankly, who have become advocates on some level. And I never say everybody needs to be an advocate, because you don't. And I never want to guilt, shame, or put pressure, right? You're either called to it and it's a thing you want to do, or you're not. And either way is perfectly fine. Or you're not. And either way is perfectly fine. Or you're not. And either way is perfectly fine. I know for me, since I'm such a question queen, the first thing I did was ask to speak with a plastic surgeon. And I don't know if everyone knows that that's something they can do. And I got second opinions on absolutely everything. And the first plastic surgeon really just discussed implant reconstruction. The second plastic surgeon, implant reconstruction. The second plastic surgeon, she asked me a lot of amazing questions about my lifestyle, my expectations, my activity, all of these things that at first you're like, why are you asking these questions? But then from there, she went on to discuss the different types of reconstruction, also pointing out what she did, because she does implant reconstruction, saying that if I were to choose a tissue reconstruction, she would send me on to a specialist, but she at least made me aware of all of my options. And you and I were talking a bit in the green room, and I had a stat, and we can roll into shared decision-making after this, because I think that's so critical. But one of the statistics that I found in the last week was that 32% of women don't feel adequately involved in their breast reconstruction decision-making. And there were 16% that reported they had zero input on their reconstruction. And then the other number that I looked up just before we got on today was that just 23% of women understand the wide range. And I can see how that could happen. Had I not asked for a second opinion, I would have done some internet sleuthing and found other options. But had I just gone with that first consult, the only options I would have known about would have been implant reconstruction. And then one of the challenges with implant, I did not do radiation, but had I done radiation, that might not have been an option for me.
Right.
So when it comes to shared decision-making, it was episode 17. It was episode 17, and I did actually interview PRMA and Dr. Chris Apollo. Amazing. And the Breast Advocate app he has, I think, is also phenomenal for helping with shared decision-making. But let's talk about what shared decision-making is, and how you, through the Deep Sea Foundation, have resources, tools, and information that can kind of support men and women in that process.
Yeah. So
Foundation have resources.
Yeah, so shared decision making is a very important mission of Deep Sea Foundation. And honestly, Tammy, there are three power. Tammy, there are three power. Tammy, there are three powerful words, unless you consider it the hyphenated word, just two words: shared decision making. It is a philosophy that we hope becomes a standard practice. So that's kind of the driven mission. Now, shared decision making can take many forms. You talked about being a patient advocate. So, in my opinion, so I, in my, so in my opinion, everybody is a patient advocate. That runs on a spectrum too. You have patient advocate that runs on a spectrum too. You have patient advocates who are advocating for their own best healthcare, who don't work in the same space that we do. They don't, attend conferences. They don't, have podcasts. Have podcast, Facebook, have podcast, Facebook groups, support groups, et cetera, et cetera. And yet they have been their own best. And yet they have been their own best advocates in their healthcare because, patients are very consumer savvy these days because the internet gives us great access. However, as the internet gives us great gives us the internet gives us great access. The internet gives us great access. However, you got to watch out for Dr. Google too. So finding evidence. So finding evidence-based medicine, evidence-based research, the latest and best techniques in reconstructive surgery is something that we provide at the foundation so that any woman or man who goes into their reconstructive consult has that information so that they can engage in shared decision making. So what does that look like? A patient can go in and know what their reconstructive options are, whether they're going to do implants, whether they're going to use their own tissue like I did. They might use a combination, or they might decide, like your, the lady that you interviewed, Kim Bowles, like your, the lady that you interviewed, Kim Bowles, she's a good, like the lady that you interviewed, Kim Bowles, she's a good friend of mine too, with aesthetic flat closure, decide not to do reconstruction. But to me, that's a type of reconstruction because plastic surgeons work with a scaffold, and the scaffold is a chest wall. So whether you reconstruct it aesthetically with flat closure, or reconstruct it with implants, or reconstruct it with your own tissue, or reconstruct it with your own tissue, how in the world can you make a decision without knowing what those options are? Shared decision making includes what the patient brings to the table, and that means what information have they looked up? What information have they gathered, either from searching on Google, talking to other friends, talking to their healthcare team, and finding out what those options are. But they also have to know what their preferences are. And your surgeon, Tammy, asking what your lifestyle was, that's an important part of that shared decision-making conversation, because surgery involves recovery. Surgery involves a lifetime decision. Your body's going to change. It will not be the same as it was prior to reconstruction, no matter what kind you choose. You need to know how it's going to change. You need to know how it's going to affect your lifestyle. Are you an athlete? Can you get back to what you were doing before? Are you a mother with small children? When will I be able to lift those children? Are you a professional man or woman? Are you a professional man or woman who travels frequently? When can I get back to work? Or if you have, let's say you are an equestrian. When can I get back on the horse? All of those things need to be brought up at the time of the consult with your plastic surgeon. So that's what patients take to the consult. That's their knowledge base. They know themselves best. They know what their preferences are. The surgeon, on the other hand, brings their expertise. So what kind of surgeries do they perform? And I don't know who this woman was you went to, but the fact that she gave you all your options, and also the fact that she said, if you decide to do tissue reconstruction, I'm going to send you to someone else. I applaud that kind of statement, because not all plastic surgeons are microsurgeons. Because not all plastic surgeons are microsurgeons. So let's say you go to a plastic surgeon, and it's part of your plastic surgeon, and it's part of your healthcare appointments. When you're diagnosed, and you know you're going to lose your breast, you go to a plastic surgeon, diagnosed, and you know you're going to lose your breast, and you know you're going to lose your breast. When you're diagnosed, you know you're going to lose your breast, and you know you're going to lose your breast. and you know you're going to lose your breast, and you know you're going to lose your breast. Diagnosed, and you know you're going to lose your breast. Diagnosed, and you know you're going to lose your breast. Diagnosed, and you know you're going to lose your breast. Diagnosed, and you know you're going to lose your breast. You go to a plastic surgeon, and you walk in, and they say, "Well, you know, you can do implant surgery. So what would you like? Okay. So what would you like? Okay. Well, you weren't given all your options. If they say you have two options for reconstruction, basically, you can use your own tissue or you can use implants. Okay. You've been given all your options. It breaks down to more than that. But in addition, if they say to you, now, if you want to do tissue reconstruction, I don't do that. I'm going to send you to someone else. That you got a bonus there, because if you only go to plastic, if you only go to plastic, because if you only go to a plastic surgeon and they say, you know, well, I can give you some implants. There are a lot of plastic surgeons, and plastic surgeons who do reconstruction, all of them can do implant surgery. But there is a subset of plastic surgeons called microsurgeons. So if you decide you're going to have tissue reconstruction, that involves more training. It involves a fellowship in microsurgery where you learn to sew together those blood vessels I referred to earlier in the deep flap. And it takes a great deal of training and skill. And so you have to go to a microsurgeon to do any type of tissue reconstruction. So you know, to kind of wrap up the to kind of wrap up the shared decision-making consult in a nice, neat package, it's when each of these entities, each of these experts, the patient knowing their own body, the microsurgeon or the plastic surgeon knowing what their skill is and what they can offer, they discuss those options. They discuss lifestyle. They discuss the risk. They discuss the benefits of both. They discuss the benefits of both. Each entity gets to present those findings, and then they discuss what the best preference and choice is for the patient. That's what shared decision making is. Wrapping it up in a neat little package. But Tammy, honestly, I think my background as an ESL teacher and teaching both children and adult English language learners, what I learned is that culture, demographics, a number of different things are figured into the shared decision-making model. And so not everyone has the access to surgeons. Not everyone has the wherewithal or the voice, you might call it, to be able to engage in this. And so that's what we really, really strive to provide at Deep Sea Foundation with a number of different, entities.
Terry, I'm really
Terry,
I'm really glad that you mentioned access, because it does not escape me that there's a certain amount of privilege that I experienced even in my ability to get a second opinion and speak with multiple providers, right? And that has to do with the type of insurance I have. It has to do with the area in which I live and access to care. In the Seattle area, we have many amazing doctors. We have the University of Washington Medical Center. We've got Fred Hutch. I mean, we have Seattle Cancer Care Alliance. We have no shortage of amazing resources. And even though I'm in a rural area outside of Seattle, that's all still very accessible to me.
Yes. Yeah, access is so important. I oddly enough, Tammy, I just spoke to a woman. Oddly enough, Tammy, I just spoke to a woman today who I will be giving some of the foundation support to tomorrow in a phone conversation. It was very frustrating to her because I'm bringing this up. I'm bringing this I'm bringing this up for a reason. She went to a surgeon who, because of this woman's particular body habitus, she said, I can't perform breast reconstruction on you. Well, that's, I want the listeners to know that's not a reflection on the plastic surgeon. She's being truthful with this woman. It could be the comfort level and the level of experience that the surgeon has, but yet it's an access issue for this woman. So what I'm going to do tomorrow is to talk to her about, some other surgeons she might contact who may have some different experience, but also to let her know it may involve travel. And for many women, especially I think women who involve travel. And for many women, especially I think women who do tissue reconstruction, access can be problematic. And so honestly, they have to be problematic. And so honestly, they have to be prepared to travel. I know I did. It was well worth it. It's doable, but it takes planning.
I want to talk about that for a moment, because I think that oftentimes, how do I phrase this? In talking with other fellow survivors, there are many times that the final word from the provider they just spoke with is accepted as the final word. So to your point, Terry, that, that may be for that provider. However, there are other options that are out there, and other opportunities for conversation. So, and I have to admit, like, I never thought about travel, but I didn't have to, again, being in the Seattle area. I guess I did travel, but not really. It was to Seattle, an overnight hospital stay, and then home. And I'm an hour and a half on traffic away from the hospital. So, but talk to me a little bit about that process of just making those decisions, interviewing. How do you, gosh, in 2014, there probably wasn't telehealth. I know PMRA now does a televisit, or can. PMRA now does a PMRA now does a televisit, or can do at least an initial consult with a televisit. Technology is so much more amazing in how televisit. Technology is so much more amazing in how with a televisit. Technology is so much more amazing in how visit. Technology is so much more amazing in visit. Technology is so much more amazing in how much easier it is to share images and everything else. So what is that process, or how would you prepare someone for having the conversation and doing the research? Like you, I research my providers. I don't care if it's primary care or whatever. I head out to the Google, and Google and I do a little homework and make sure that the provider I'm seeing has great reviews, and comments to and comments to support the stars, and comments to support great reviews, and comments to support the great reviews, and comments to support the stars.
Yes, exactly. Yes, travel for reconstruction. So actually, interestingly enough, I did look at the microsurgeons up here in Seattle at the time. Excellent folks up here, I will say. It's so interesting, Tammy. I'm going to digress here for just a minute for a reason. When I had my reconstruction, I was so absolutely gobsmacked by the skill of my surgeon, but just the fact we live in an era where we can use our own tissue to reconstruct our breast. That to me was just amazing. And, in writing my blog, I talked about my surgeon, the center I went to, and then I opened the foundation and I went to my first conference, and I met the value of that was that I got to meet surgeons from all over the country. And then I set a goal for myself. I'm like, okay, I'm going to meet these surgeons because I had to travel. Luckily, geographically, it was okay for me to go. We lived in Arizona at the time. It was a fairly easy flight to go from Arizona to San Antonio. I had to change planes once. At the time, there really wasn't anybody up here in Seattle that I could lean heavily on. That was just at the time. Now both of our sons are back up here. So, I may have chosen differently back in 2000 heavily on. That was just at the time. Now both of our sons are back up here. So, I may have chosen differently back in 2014. So I guess my point is I looked around the country geographically, and I saw some amazing curriculum vitae. Fortunately, I have been able to meet some of those surgeons now that I looked for back in 2014. And I'm like, well, no wonder I wanted to go to them. No wonder they were on the list to consider. They're amazing microsurgeons. They're amazing microsurgeons. And so now I'm able to provide those resources for women and men who are looking to reconstruct. And honestly, more women reconstruct than men do. However, men can have reconstruction too. But I ask them, I go, well, all right, tell me what area you're in. Tell me where you're located in the country. And they tell me, and they go, there are no surgeons in my area who do tissue reconstruction. And I'm like, well, next question, are you willing to travel? Yes, I am, if they take my insurance. And I'm like, okay, first question you ask, whoever you call, will they take your insurance? And Tammy, I have to tell you, even though the Women's Healthcare, what is it called? The WICR, I can't ever remember that acronym, that says that breast reconstruction is covered by law if your mastectomy was covered, not all practices carry all insurances. And so that's where the caveat is. And that's what women need to understand. So right out of the blocks, I say, ask them first if they take your insurance. Secondly, when you're considering where you're going to go, if you have tissue reconstruction, you're going to have to stay there usually 10 days to 2 weeks. You've got a few days in the hospital, usually, 2 to 3. Again, that depends on what kind of protocols they use. And then you stay for and then you stay for a period of time so that you can go back and have a consult until they release you to go home. So I ask them, geographically look at these areas. Look at these areas. Look at these areas. Look at these areas. Is this an area you'd be willing to travel to? Because I know some reconstructive surgeons in this area that are highly successful, whether it's Ohio, Seattle, San Antonio, they're all over the country. And I say to them, will you have someone that is willing to go with you, either a spouse, a partner, a friend, a sister, whoever, who is going to be willing to care for you during those 2 weeks? So that's also paramount. Just, there's so much to think about, but it's doable and worth it. And, I might ask them, do you have somebody? I might ask them, do you have somebody, do you have family in this town? I know a reconstructive surgeon in this town. Do you have, and so I kind of step-by-step guide them in these directions. Then, a lot of times I'll provide a list of questions for them to ask their surgeon when they're in the consult, when they're in the consult, them to ask their surgeon when they're in the consult, give them an idea of their travel, what they're told, give them an idea of their travel, what their travel costs are going to be, what their recovery is going to be like. Some of them are very fearful. They're like, well, what if I get home and something happens? That's a really important question. I had a seamless recovery. I came home with no drains. I had no wound issues. Dr. Crisopolo looked at me at my consult and called me an overachiever. But I think I was just lucky, Tammy. I was a compliant patient. He was a great surgeon, and my body just responded well. So, but that's not the case for everybody. In reality, there's women who go home with drains. They might have them for, upwards of 6 weeks sometimes. There are women who go, there are women who go home and they have wound issues. So what I tell them, I say, before you leave, coordinate with your local oncologist, your primary care, or see if there's a wound clinic in your city. Call them before you leave, so all that's set in place just in case. And ask at your consult, just in case. And ask at just in case. And ask at your consult. Say to them, how do I get a just in case? And ask at your consult. Say to them, how do I get a hold of you if I have a problem? I had such great response. I had such great response from my plastic surgeons team. I mean, I would email the nurse and she'd get right back to me. So there's just, there's a lot that goes into the process, and that's just part of the guidance and support that the foundation offers either through our Facebook page or offers either through guidance and support that the foundation offers either through our Facebook page or, like I said, I've got an appointment to talk to this one gal tomorrow. It's monumental. It's monumental, but it's very doable. And there's so many women who have had wonderful experiences that, they can share those on my Facebook group or to other women they meet and say, they can share those on my Facebook group or to other women they meet and say, you know what, I did it and so can you, and here's some tips on how to do it.
I love it, because I can see how that could be incredibly overwhelming, especially at the beginning. I think back to, I think back to when I was originally diagnosed, and even making the decision for delayed reconstruction versus immediate reconstruction for me, since we knew that I was going to do an implant reconstruction, and having different providers have different thoughts on that. It was actually my general surgeon that was like, how about one medical trauma at a time, basically is what he said to me. So I went, 3.5 months before I had expanders placed. And then after that, it was 6 months before I actually had the implants placed. And so I think that's the other thing too. Understanding what that process is going to be like, whether it is tissue reconstruction or whether it is implant reconstruction. I don't think there's really any quote unquote easy way out. It's a body modification, and it is going to, there are going to be all kinds of new things you learn about yourself as part of that process. So
there is, and there's no cookie cutter, there's no cookie cutter reconstruction. There is, and there's no cookie cutter, there's no cookie cutter reconstruction, and there's no cookie cutter reconstruction because I was completely through with my treatment. I didn't have any radiation or chemo. I did with my treatment. Through with my treatment. I didn't have any radiation or chemo. I did not have tissue expanders, but I did have skin sparing, nipple sparing. Then you have women who are diagnosed and they they're going to have immediate reconstruction. Well, and they're going to have immediate reconstruction. And they're going to have immediate reconstruction. And they're going to have immediate reconstruction. Well, they don't know if they're going to have radiation, so they have a tissue expander placed. Then they might have radiation after that, and they have to have it delayed deep. The list goes on. And then deep. Deep. The list goes on. And then Tammy, also, I keep talking about deep flap. There are women who don't qualify for deep flap. And again, the beauty of the era that we're living in now, there are other areas of the body that you can use for tissue reconstruction. There's the inner thigh. They call it a tug flap, tongue-tied. Well, I forgot the acronym for that. Trans upper gracilis, which is a fancy name, flap. But it's just flap. But it's just the, which is a fancy name, flap. But it's just the, which is a fancy name, flap. But it's just the thigh muscle that they disconnect. It has a good blood source. I just did a video with a doctor up in South Carolina about the PAP flap, which is kind of, it's at the inner back part underneath the buttock. There's also the top of the buttock. There's just a number of flap options. So just because I'm sitting here talking about deep flap and someone might go in and say, well, I'm not a candidate, there's other options.
That is also such a great point. I know that is also such
There's other options.
That is also such a great point. I know with one of my second opinions, one of the things that was tossed out was tissue reconstruction. This wasn't with the surgeon that I went with. It was another second opinion. And the bottom line was, at that point in time, I did not have the body fat to recreate the breast mound. So I could have still done tissue, like a hybrid, I guess, of tissue reconstruction, but right. I still would have needed to have an implant at that time. Now I've remedied that problem over the last couple of years.
Well,
I have the extra now.
I'm thinking, due to the pandemic,
now.
I'm thinking, due to the pandemic, there may be more applicants for deep flap now. There may be more applicants for deep flap now.
Right?
All of our tummies have gotten a little bigger during the pandemic.
Oh my gosh. It is such a process. And I love that at the foundation, you really do advocate for all of it and help to make sure that men and women who get in touch with the Deep Sea Foundation know about all of the options that are available so they can start having those conversations, those wise patient-informed conversations, those wise patient-informed conversations so that they can ask some really good questions. And I think back to being first diagnosed and how it just feels like, the cancer train, you are just on this bullet train and things are moving so fast and you are trying to do your best to keep up, learn a new language or two because you're talking with so many different doctors, making decisions based on what you understand of your diagnosis and your options. And it's just such a chaotic time. And this information is truly life and body altering. And I think that is one of the things that often doesn't get discussed enough, that reconstruction, whether or not you have reconstruction, with mastectomies even, and zero reconstruction, it is a biomechanic change to your body. You are changing your body.
Yep, indeed you are.
And there is no action without reaction.
Yes, boy, that's a good statement, Tammy. That is so true. So true.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so where are all of the different places that folks can find you, follow you, support you, and support you, and also utilize the great tools and resources that you have available?
Well, listen, I think the first thing I would say is, if you're newly diagnosed, if you are facing a mastectomy and the thought of losing your breast, I would never tell you to have reconstruction. What I would say to you is, don't be too hard on yourself at the beginning and, get so wrapped around the axle about what decision you have to make. So what we provide is this, and I like to say we're 24/7 because you can go to the Deep Sea Foundation YouTube channel. And that's DIEP, the letter C, which is the first initial of my last name. There's a lot of discussion about how I came up with that name, but it's Deep Sea Foundation YouTube channel. And you can type in a number of different topics. You can type in implant, PAP flap, different topics. You can type in implant, different topics. You can type in different topics. You can type in a number of different topics. You can type in number of different topics. You can type in implant, pap flap. We have patient stories. I want you to feel when you go to that YouTube channel that you have free access almost to free consult or free chats with patients. And you can do it 24/7. And you can access that information and find out what the latest techniques are, what the risks are, what the risks are. Talk to other patients who have had nipple tattoos. Talk to tattoo artists. Talk to tattoo artists. That's the Deep Sea Foundation YouTube channel. Also on Instagram, we post a lot of, a variety of things. Inspirational. We post our YouTubes, our YouTubes. We post blog information. So Instagram also is Deep Sea Foundation. Pinterest, Deep Sea Foundation. Now, my Twitter account, for those that use Twitter, is at the numeral 6 and state. I established that before I started my foundation, and I've stuck with it. It means that I've had teaching certificates in 6 states. I currently still hold my Washington teaching certificate, I'm proud to say. So at 6 state is Twitter. So at 6 state is Twitter. Now this year we launched the Deep Sea Journey podcast, and I'm just thrilled with that. I'm just thrilled with that because, whether you're sitting on your back porch on a long summer evening and you just need to get away and absorb some stuff, if you've been at work and you're like, okay, now I need to dig into some content, you can plug into the Deep Sea Journey podcast. We're on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Play, all of the above, and listen again to these wonderful people I have interviewed. I feel so fortunate, Tammy, to have been able to get the folks on the podcast that we just started in January and is starting to pick up a lot of followers. Then I think, the meat, I don't know, it's hard for me. I don't know. It's hard for me to say the meat of the work because it's a part of the work. On Facebook, we have work. On Facebook, we have our public page, which is deepseafoundation.org. But also I invite women and men and caregivers who, for those who are affected by breast cancer and facing reconstruction, to request to join Deep Sea Journey, the Deep Sea Journey Facebook page. It's called Deep Sea Journey Breast Reconstruction After Mastectomy, and it's a private group, and you have to answer. It's a private mastectomy. It's a private group, and you have to answer a couple of questions to get approval to join. And sign the rules. I would like to also add that we have set ourselves apart on Facebook because we invite healthcare providers. We have microsurgeons, tattoo artists, radiologists, physical therapists, genetic counselors. I want everyone to learn together. I want those people accessible. Nobody promotes their business on there. They're there to comfort and ask questions. I don't allow pictures either, Tammy. I don't allow pictures either, Tammy. I will have to tell you now. When I say pictures, I mean unclothed pictures. I'm not being a prude, but I do it for a reason. The reason I don't allow pictures is because women who have just had reconstruction, who might have some wound issues, who might be not so satisfied with their reconstruction, and they post those pictures. Well, for someone that's considering reconstruction, it's going to make them turn and run away. If someone saw me the morning after my reconstruction with drains coming out of me and all of the bruising, they would have run the other way. My breasts today look beautiful. I am saying that publicly online, but that's the reason that we don't. Now, if they want to post pictures, thumbs up, they're on their way to surgery in the morning. If they want to post a picture in their swimming suit after the reconstruction, celebrating, 5 years of survivorship, we love that. We embrace that on the journey. But those are the reasons. And, we want to abide by the Facebook guidelines too. So that's it.
I love it. So for listeners, we are going to have all of the links below. I love that in your Facebook group, you do have caregivers and you do have providers, because I think that is such a missed opportunity when we don't invite everyone to come together, and men and women. So everybody, which is just amazing.
Yes. It takes a lot of people to help with this. And yeah,
it does. So. And to your point, I mean, even with my surgery, and I have amazing results now, it was the first set. I had to have a revision. And then I had such bad animation that in 2019, I went from subpectoral to prepectoral because I was having complications. And so that's sort of the other thing. I often sort of jokingly say I had no idea that, I would be spending 5 years just kind of going through this process of body modification and getting back to where it feels good for
Yes.
me. I won't say
Yes.
normal because that ship sailed. That's like holding the same bit of river twice. You just can't do it. So,
Breast cancer is that paradigm shift in the word normal.
isn't it? Oh my
Yes.
goodness.
Yeah, and the other thing I forgot to mention too is the blog that I've written. That's the one that I started out with. That was my baby from the get go, and it's deepseajourney.com. So yeah, I mean, Tammy, I'm glad really that you've had the strength to plow through your own reconstructive journey. Albeit with some albeit with some hiccups. Reconstructive journey, albeit with some hiccups, and to be a voice out there in the and to some hiccups and to be a voice out there in the universe.
We are going to make booby talk normal. That's
I already have. I have to be careful because sometimes I'll be out in public and they'll go, "What do you do?" And I go, "Well," then I get on my little, I do my little elevator speech, and all of a sudden the next thing I know, my hands are going to my boobs, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, sorry, that's what I talk about."
Exactly. And I'm so glad you do. And I'm so glad you launched your podcast. And thank you for all the work and advocacy work you do.
Oh,
And
it's my pleasure. I love it. I love doing it. It's what keeps me going every day. And I'm so inspired, not only by the patients, but the caregivers and the surgeons who have dedicated themselves to this real estate relocation, as I call it.
yes. Oh my heck, yes.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And for our listeners, for more information about what you heard on today's show, definitely check out the links. Be sure to check out the Deep Sea Foundation's YouTube channel, as well as Your Killer Life. And hey, subscribe to both. You're doing everyone a favor when you do that. It helps us get the message out, and it helps us to even support, I'm sure, with the Deep Sea Foundation, helps them support all of the work that they do. Also, you can visit us at yourkillerlife.com. Thank you again for joining the conversation. And until next time, keep building your killer life. Killer Life. Killer Life.
Thank you for listening to Your Killer.
I still struggle with being able to drag across a specific area in a track and just deleting that small part during editing. It's causing me so much grief. Are you talking about doing something like this? And yeah, okay. So I'll show you the custom action I use, and something I'm pretty sure I got from Riley. If you look up his Podigy like Reaper guide to podcast editing or something like that, it was recently posted in the Podcast Editors Club. He walks you through it, but basically, but can you use a cursor within the track without highlighting the tracks underneath? Okay, so here's what I think. This is my interpretation. Let me know if it's wrong. So whenever you are you so like, let's say you want to delete this item, is that what you're talking about without affecting the one up here? If so, or even highlighting a section, let's say I want to delete right here. If I were to, there's no way to easily delete this without deleting up top. So let me show you the custom actions I have for both of those instances, and let me know if this helps. So if you just want to delete this item, the custom action I use for that is my 2-track cut. So it's, yes, this is where I have a problem. Okay, so set ripple editing off, then remove items, envelopes, points, depending on focus. Set ripple editing tracks. So set ripple editing all tracks, and then go to play cursor position. So what that does, so as you're editing.
Oh my heck, yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much.
You can just select that item, hit your key, and it deletes it without affecting any of the other tracks, because it starts by turning the ripple editing off, then deletes it, and then turns ripple editing back on. And then the other one I showed you, so let's say you want to delete this section right here without affecting it, you can modify your mouse keys. So right now I can highlight the track using so this is me dragging with my right click. So right click, I can drag, and I can then hit a key to delete just that time selection I had and only on the track that I highlighted. So if I wanted to do this track, I could do that. If I wanted to do both, I could, or whichever one you want. So the two things there. So first, the mouse modifier. If you go into your preferences and under mouse modifiers, uh, context, let's see. So change it. Yeah, so what did I do? That would be good. Oh, arrange view. And then make select right drag. The default action, double click here and just make sure it's under marquee select items, set time selection. So that way, whenever you right click, it selects the items under what you highlight. Hey, welcome back, Kareem. We actually just finished the editing. So now I'm going through the, Bonnie had a couple questions about like deleting items without affecting the other tracks. Yeah, so those are the two I have. Oh, and then to delete it. So let's say like something happens here.
Oh,
and I want to delete this section. The custom action I use is this. And then it's set ripple editing off. Cut items, tracks, envelope points, depending on focus within time selection. And then turn ripple editing back on. Go to play cursor, unselect items, and then remove time selection. And that just, so right now this item is selected. It's just unselecting it like that. And then removing time selection like that. So then I can right click and drag this section, hit my key, and it deletes just that little area. I have a question. Can you make a track totally safe from any edit, like maximum locking it? Maybe. I feel like there's something like that. I don't know off the top of my head. Okay, that's not it. So that locks track controls. I don't know. I'm not aware of it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I'm sure there's some script out there that can make that happen. That would be pretty useful. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure. So yeah, I couldn't find that yet. There seems to be a limited locking, but usual splitting and deleting still affects it. Yeah. So I've gotten everything edited. So whenever I do multi-track, I always like to have a meter on each track, as well as the one on the master track, which now that Reaper has a built-in one, I don't have to worry about that as much. Yes, I need it for references. Okay. So that way when I go to render it, I can monitor each track, just kind of a final, kind of final thing. So this way, if like the loudness range or whatever of my track is off, I know exactly which track it is that's causing it. So now we got 8 minutes of this. I am going to be right back. Get a refill, use the restroom real quick. So hang out, and then we'll kind of wrap this up and kind of see at the end what the final results are. So We'll do a fancy schmancy be right back screen. Just like that. All right, be right back. All right. So one thing, um, let's see. Work around. Maybe hide the track you want to lock. Hide it. Um. So as I can see, this track is much too quiet. So the cool thing with doing it this way, I can actually go in. Let me pull this off and adjust it while it's rendering. And then with WLM, I can just reset it and then kind of monitor it as it changes, but she doesn't talk a whole lot. So it's not effective. It's much more effective if there's a thing like a solo show. So now I'm just going to do analyze the using Reaper's new loudness tool, analyze the loudness of just that track. So it might be a bit loud. I'll just wait till it gets to her next speaking part, and then I can kind of judge it from there. Are there any other questions or any actions you guys want me to see, or any questions you have about something? Well, we got this a little bit of downtime. So I don't know when I'll do another live stream. Hopefully, let me think. Probably tomorrow or Monday, I'll get around to re-recording once again the video I'm trying to do on the Reaper update with all like the new loudness tools. Hopefully I don't have any tech issues again. And then I got another video coming out. I got to record it. I just need to like get it edited. That should be coming out in the next couple days. Yeah. Also want to do some like live Q&As in the Facebook group. So if you do have any questions that you want to get help with, get suggestions from the community, that's something I'm really excited about doing. So just let me know if you're interested in that, and we can get that set up. So looking at this, see, and so here's an interesting thing. They're looking pretty even, just a couple, 0.3 right now off. One thing I could do is throw it, like create a folder and add that max volume plugin to try to like get it closer. I might play with that a little bit off stream, but I think I got it dialed in pretty well. So go ahead and render this out again. Still have all my settings right, yeah. So yeah, so one thing I've started doing is the save copy of project to outfile.wave.rpp. I'll keep my eyes open for the Q&A in the Facebook group because I really enjoy the info sessions. I learn a lot from every single one. Awesome. Yeah, so it's going to be in the Reaper Facebook group. If you aren't a member, there is the link. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully I can do it soon. Yeah. It's just trying to find the time to actually get everything done. But yeah, I'm excited about doing that. Oh yeah, save a copy of this. Because sometimes whatever happens, I actually run 2 instances of Reaper sometimes, so one might overwrite the other, and so this will actually save the project as is, like the final whatever. So if something does happen and you lose any save, anything you did that didn't save, you do have like a backup copy right whenever you rendered it the last time, which is pretty cool. So yeah, now we can just kind of sit here in awkwardness as this renders. Anybody got any plans for the weekend? So we adopted a new dog probably about 6 or 7 weeks ago. Much more rambunctious and hyper than our last dog. So we actually signed up for dog training lessons, dog training sessions at the Humane Society where we adopted her from. And so we did that this morning. And she has just been, she's doing a lot better. That was our morning, is kind of doing some dog training with her. So that's been pretty fun. But she's adorable. Sounds fun. So here's the thing, like it's really informative and it's like really great getting, training from a professional, but it's so much more difficult in the location because it's actually, you go to the Humane Society and our dog is moderately reactive is what the trainer called her. We thought she was highly reactive. He says, no. It can get a lot worse. She's only moderately reactive. So if she sees another human, she wants to go and like play with him, like be close to him. She's pretty indifferent if she sees other cats, but if she sees another dog, she loses her mind. Um, so when we're at the Humane Society, fortunately they have it like cordoned off, so like we're behind like they put together like a barrier, so our dog can't see the other dogs, but you can still hear them. And it's the Humane Society, so like you can hear the dogs barking all over the place. So it's a lot harder to do like dog training in that situation because she's just there's so much stimulation. It's much easier to do it at home for sure, but she's doing a lot better, so we're excited about that. It was pretty rough for a while there. Oh, another cool update from Reaper is you can now see exactly what percentage is completed. So you don't have to guess like, oh, is that halfway? It's not, 45% done. It's a minor thing, but I like it. And then we have all of our loudness information down here. So the true peak is minus 0.6. There is no clipping. Because I do throw on a limiter on my master track. So whenever there's an interview to keep it from peaking, if there is any crosstalk or whatever they're supposed to speak at the same time, I don't have to worry about it peaking on the master track. Loudness range of 3.3, which is about where I want it, and the integrated LUFS, which is the level across the entire track so far, is minus 15.9. And our target is minus 16, so that is perfect. And they also have this information. So you can see. So if you don't know what something means, they give you like a little glossary of everything, which is pretty cool. I'm really digging this latest update. A lot of cool features. Not gonna lie, I'm probably gonna take a nap right after this, because of the dog situation. She's on a strict schedule, so she goes to bed at midnight and she gets up at 7:30, and for some reason my body's just like, no, that's too late. You're gonna get up at 6:30 now. So I definitely think I need a nap. I haven't run the latest update for fear of losing my settings. I did create the files you showed me in the beginning videos, so if you have any last minute advice, I take it. You can install it as a portable version. It won't affect anything that is installed. Congrats on the new puppy. Thank you. She is so cute. So once this is done rendering, so we got about 2.5 minutes left. I will show you. Yeah, I'll show you how to do a portable install, so that way you can install it and it won't affect your current installation. But I'll also show you how to export your settings. I think I went over that in a video, but if I didn't, I'll show you here. So that way you can save all your settings. So if there's something, so that way if something does mess up, you can just re-import them and not have to worry about it. But yeah, I do. So currently, actually, I only have one installation right now, because all the old ones were on a previous version. I believe you did show that. Okay, cool. Well, go ahead and just cover it again, so that way you don't have to worry about it. And I'll show you how to do a portable install. Yeah, but I deleted all the old ones because this was pre 6.30, and any future video will be with these, because it's such a major update. I want to make sure to have that for the videos. Yeah, I think so. I have like my main installation, and then I had 4, because so in my videos I want a fresh install, so that way anybody new to Reaper, they're not tainted. I don't know the right word, but it's not influenced by the fact that like I have so much customization on my main installation. So I like to use a fresh install. So pretty much every time I start a new video, I install a fresh version of Reaper. So I ended up with like four versions of Reaper, like 4 separate installs, and then a 5th one that was the pre-release, because before like they officially released 6.30, I was playing around with it. So looking at the 2 tracks, a 0.4 difference, which is fine. It's not going to be noticeable, but I could throw on, like I was saying, create a folder, and then using like max volume or like vocal writer or something, kind of do a little bit more compression to kind of normalize things between those two. I would guess that new users may not have Waves plugins for loudness, for example, so Ulink could work better. Yeah. I haven't done a loudness, but honestly, I'd probably just have them. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the current plugin because it is pretty basic. It's really ugly. And one thing about Waves, like their plugins look so cool because like most of them are based off of like actual hardware. But yeah, I'd recommend Ulean for new users. Whoops. Because it is free and it gives you all like everything. There's a free version. I do want to get the pro version because you can actually like run an audio file through it. And it'll analyze it for you. They give different metering too. Do they? So they have the short term, the integrated, which is like the long term loudness range, dynamic range, and peak loudness. Oh, I guess so. Momentary max, short term max, true peak. The one thing that I did have issue.
The folks on the podcast
If you
that
can
we
hear
just
it,
started in January
whenever
and is starting to pick up a lot of followers. Then
do mono, it only comes out of one side, which isn't a big deal because you can just set it to stereo and just know. But I thought that was kind of weird. Mean measurements give different value. Oh, so Ulean doesn't match what a WLM does. Interesting. I have to look into that. Okay, so settings. So if you go into your preferences up under general, you can export your configuration. And this is something I like to do. I want to do it more often than I do. But this will take all of this. So you can actually choose what you want. So like I don't do MIDI, so I can actually just take that off. But go through all this, all your plugin presets, all your configuration, everything. And then you can actually export it. So that way you can import it into a fresh install of Reaper and not have to worry about losing your settings. I have a lot of because I use Repack and SWS and a lot of repositories, so it's going to take a little bit. And the next thing I'm going to show is how to do a portable install. I have never had an issue overwriting a portable install. I think somebody in the Reaper Facebook group talked about like it was being overwritten and like losing their settings on a portable install. I don't know. I've never had that issue. So I'll show you. I think it's better to make sure to reinstall SWS and repack before importing settings. Yeah, probably. I also have my Reaper installation in Dropbox. So I have like I can go back if something does get messed up. I can go back to Dropbox and download like a previous version of it. So if you are having issues of like overwriting your settings, um, what I would suggest would be to install a portable version, and then before you update it, just like zip this or like make a copy of it, so that way you have um, a version you know is working. And then to do a portable install, we'll close out that. So let me just, we'll go to reaper.fm. We'll download the latest version. The portable version is a new thing for me. I'll have to look it up. Yeah, so basically, this folder is my entire Reaper installation, and I can copy this and move it. So right now it's on my external hard drive. I can take this external hard drive, plug it into my wife's laptop or any other PC, and use Reaper like nothing happened. It's not actually like on my main hard drive. And so when you're installing, go into the installation process, you go through all this. Right here, just click Portable Install, and then navigate to wherever you want to install it. And then go through the whole process. Except for VST plugins and common folders. Yes, you can actually move them. So if you want to take the portable folder, you need to copy VSTs as well. Yeah. So what I do, okay, just open. So this is a brand new version of Reaper. And then what I would do for me is I would navigate to my current installation, which is right here, click OK, and install that. So like I said, make a copy of it. If you have issues or you're worried about your settings being overwritten, make a copy of it. So if something does go wrong, you can always just use that. Watch now, I've never had an issue, but now that I'm on stream, it's going to be all messed up. All right. So VSTs, what I do is I have all my plugins in this folder within my Reaper installation. So everything I have is here. And then under preferences, that's the only place that Reaper will look for plugins. So that way I can just take my hard drive wherever I go, my plugins come with me. The issue is Waze with their proprietary thing is a bit of an issue. So on my hard drive, I do have a offline installer, which I think is here. So I can run this on another computer. It'll install my plugins on that one, and then it'll still work. For some reason, by doing this, I have to have Waves like in this folder, the plugins, but also in like the comments folder on the hard drive. I don't know why exactly. Waves is just weird like that, but that's why I have an offline installer, so I can go to another computer, install this, use my waste plugins, and then just uninstall it whenever I'm done. And that comes with me wherever I go, along with SWS and like all my other plugins and such. So I have backups of everything. So that's what I do. All right, so I think that's it. Unless anybody has any other questions, probably gonna end it there. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. Yeah, like I said, I don't know when the next one is I'll be doing the next one. I might try to do it next Saturday as well. I was planning. Oh, some music. I'm like, I hear something weird. I was planning on editing an episode of the Podcast Editors Mastermind today, but I'm missing one of the files, so I couldn't do it. So I might do that next weekend. Thanks so much. Go for a nap, T. I will. But if you aren't in the Facebook group, be sure to join the group because I will announce the next live stream there. And just join the Facebook group if you're interested in Reaper because it's a really good resource. All right, so now things are getting awkward, so I'm just gonna end it there, and I'll see you next time.